Interact with us so that you can be assessed by this Committee of National Assembly on your suitability to hold the office to which you have been nominated by His Excellency the President. We'll start by administering an oath. You may choose to use the Bible, the Quran. I think there's also an Indian holy book.
The Quran.
The Gita. Yes, the Quran, so you may be upstanding. Take the Quran in your right hand and recite the oath that the sergeant will show you.
I, Salim Mvuria, do swear that the evidence I shall give before this committee on the matter under this consideration shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me Allah.
The next is, if you have your documents, pass them on to the clerk to cross-check with what we have on you. We'll start by introducing ourselves. I'm the chairman of this committee, Speaker of the National Assembly. On my right is the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Gladys Boss. On my left is the Clerk of the National Assembly, Samuel Njoroge. I'll invite the honorable members of the committee to introduce themselves. Naisula
Lesuda, MP Samburu West.
Nelson Koech, MP Belgut.
David Kosing, MP Pokot South.
Gikaria David, Nakuru Town East.
Mase Mary, Teso South.
Abdul Rahim Daud, MP North Imenti.
George Gitonga Murugara, Tharaka.
Owen Baya, Kilifi North.
Robert Mbui, Kadiani.
Stephen Mule, Matungulu.
Dido Raso, Saku.
Abdishurie, Balabala.
Nishimboko Likoni.
Rehab Mukami.
I'm Caleb Sabot.
For the record,
Kimani Shoma.
For purpose of these proceedings, you'll be referred by everybody as nominee. So nominee, introduce yourselves by name, educational background, work experience, and your key competences that make you believe you are suitable for the appointment to which you have been proposed in under 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker and honorable members of this committee. My name is Salim Mvuria Mgala. I have a master's degree. I also have a bachelor's degree from Egerton University. I also did my KCSE at Mpeketoni Secondary School and primary school at Maveriverini Primary School.
Mpeketoni in Lamu.
Yes, Mpeketoni in Lamu. Mr. Speaker, I come to this vetting session also having served as the first governor of Kwale County, and I also worked different positions in international non-government organizations. I also come to this vetting committee as the immediate former cabinet secretary, mining, blue economy, and maritime affairs. I come to this committee, Mr. Speaker, having served the public for over 10 years. Mr. Speaker and members of this committee, I also have leadership, management, and administrative skills that are part of my competencies for this process. I come to this vetting committee also with a formidable track record of performance in different spheres of the public, having transformed the county of Kwale socially, politically, and economically, and also having provided leadership in key reforms in the Ministry of Mining, Blue Economy, and Maritime Affairs. There are quite a number of details, but because of time, I want to present myself before this committee and before Kenyans as a candidate, as a nominee who has the formidable requisite experience to manage the affairs of the Ministry of Investment, Trade, and Industry. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'll invite the Deputy Speaker to ask the first question.
Honorable Mvuria, I will ask you questions, one relating to where you're coming from, so we know how well you performed from your previous Ministry of Mining and Blue Economy, and then to the ministry that you're going to. First, I'll start. I would like you to tell us about the key deliverables that can be attributed to your tenure when you were the CS for Blue Economy, Maritime, and so on. You know, taking into account some of the issues that are raised, in 2023, there was unexplained deaths of cage farmers in Lake Victoria. You know, what did you do about that? There was also, when you came into office, there had been a report in 2019, the performance audit report on monitoring of mining operations by the State Department of Mining, and an act of parliament, the Mining Act, had been passed when you came into office. So Kenya said that, the report said that currently only 1% of our GDP is attributable to mining, yet it should be as high as 10%. And another thing that was raised in that report is that we've had mines that have not been restored, which has become areas of criminal activity. There's also been deaths around unlicensed and properly regulated mines. So how did you work when you joined office to enhance the sector's oversight, improve licensing conditions, and to ensure that we have responsible mining practices? On where you're going, I'm reliably informed that the Ministry of Trade, where you're going, also has a Kenya Bureau of Standards under it. Tell us what you will do to ensure that you curb the issue of counterfeit products and substandard products and contraband products coming into our country, particularly ethanol, which has caused the big challenge of illicit brew, because people are smuggling the ethanol through Uganda and Tanzania, because I think the duty in Kenya is much higher. And lastly, also the banned pesticides that are banned and have been confirmed to cause cancer, that are coming through our borders and are being cleared by KEBS. Thank you.
Nominee, you can answer those.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair and Honorable Gladys, for the questions that you put before me. First of all, when I reported and assumed office at the Ministry of Mining, Blue Economy and Maritime Affairs, this was a very new ministry. The three topics have been there before: mining, fisheries, blue economy, but in terms of having it as a ministry, that was the first time. So I did provide leadership in carrying out key reforms to ensure that that ministry can achieve the mandate and also can make a contribution in the economy of our country. And the first reform that we carried out was the reform around licensing. Before the reforms, licensing was very haphazard, and therefore what has happened now is that we have now an organized licensing system where investors apply through the online cadastre, and then we have structures that review and recommend licensing. And even as I left office, the process of licensing is up to date, and it is now working according to procedure. As a result of that, the moratorium was lifted in October last year, and licenses over 1,200 are now getting processed without any challenges. The second thing that is key for reforms is the testing and sampling. Investors had a lot of challenges, on testing their products, and therefore I led reforms that have now devolved 8 labs across the country. So now we have decentralization, and investors can easily now do their testing across the country. There's one more that is still under reform, the Madini House, which I also had committed to the committee at that time, and it is also in good progress. I also provided leadership in instituting reforms on value addition, and as we speak, we have quite a number of investors across the country that are doing value addition, because exporting of raw minerals denies the country a lot of revenue and jobs. If you go to the Western region, for example, we have an investor in gold refinery, 5.8 billion. In Elgeyo Marakwet, you have Flospa. We have an investor, 4.8 billion. In Vihiga, we have an investor, 2.5 billion. And we had also mapped other areas of the country. Right now, there's an investor who is ready to do 11 billion of iron ore in Taita Taveta. That will also benefit Tharaka in an area called Kithiori and part of Kitui. So that bringing on board of investors is part of my achievement in the ministry. And we also organized the artisanal mining individuals into cooperative societies. Now we have about 300 cooperative societies that are ready for licensing across the country. I provided leadership in gazetting 29 artisanal mining committees that will be giving permits on the ground so that people do not have to travel away from where they are. We took the issue of illegal mining very seriously and safety, and proposed measures to have a mining police unit that is responsible for some of the issues. So I take note of the issues you have raised about the insecurity in some of the mines. So the mining police unit has been very critical in making sure that they work with the county security teams to ensure that some of these issues are being addressed on the ground. In terms of mine restoration, each of the applicant for a mining license, they have to attach an environmental restoration plan, which they do as they report, and they also do as they exit. And we have compliance teams to ensure that this can be observed. The other thing is that mining was understaffed, and we have quite a number of staff now who have come on the ground, and things are moving on. On blue economy, many people, many Kenyans had not understood the blue economy and fishery sector, and we instituted reforms also to ensure that we can inspire the economy of the country through blue economy. As a result, we provided a mapping in the Indian Ocean and Lake Victoria so that we can allow for lower level value addition units and infrastructure that are going to help fishermen and other stakeholders in the sector. So as a result, we did mapping from all the way Lamu to Kwale, and also from Busia to Migori, and identified areas for basic value addition. As I speak, these value addition points have now been contracted, and they will be helping fishermen to delay sales so that they can fetch good price. On that note, we also provided leadership in ensuring that we reform the beach management units into cooperative societies. Right now, we have around 240 cooperative societies in the fishery sector that are going to be very useful, you know, to engage with the economy in terms of capacity building, but also in terms of engaging and being linked to financial institutions. So right now, the government is now ready to invest 1.4 billion in the coast region for the landing sites, and the government is also ready to invest another 1.5 billion in the lake region, all the way from Mulukoba to Got Kochola in Migori, where those structures have been identified. Since independence, this country has not had an industrial vessel. We licensed the first one, which is going to be providing, you know, avenue for industrial fishing, and provide 4 billion every year in terms of income in the Indian Ocean. Our target was to do 3 before the end of the year, but last 2 weeks we gave license to 1 vessel, and more are coming to ensure that we are able to inspire the potential in the blue economy sector. So, Mr. Speaker, this topic is very lucrative, but I also want to add that Kenya is now a highly respected maritime country, because when we went to London last year and the campaign, Kenya was elected category C as a maritime country. And as a result of that profile, I continue to provide leadership to ensure that we are able to upgrade our institutions to fit the new profile. As a result of that, we have a pending draft bill for Bandari Maritime Academy to be a full institution. And part of the upgrade is to construct a survival and training center, which will cost the government of Kenya 2.4 billion, basically to ensure that we enhance our capacity building on maritime affairs.
Okay, I think, Honorable Mvuria, I think I'm satisfied now, but I think it confirms what the President said, that you had very poor communication, because you've done great things, but no Kenyan knows about it. I am from the Flospa area. I didn't even know that you have an investor for it. So maybe you can use an opportunity to tell my people in Elgeyo Marakwet what exactly you're doing with Flospa before you go to your next answer.
Thank you very much, Honorable Gladys. And I think maybe we missed out, but the members of parliament from that region and the leadership, we were together when we were introducing the investor. But because of this session, I'm sure now we have created awareness across the board to tell everybody that now we have an investor in Elgeyo.
Before we go to the next, Salim, the licensed industrial vessel in our ocean waters, is it Kenyans or foreigners?
It is a foreign owned, but also we'll have Kenyans who also partner in that vessel.
What percent local content?
The local content, okay, we haven't signed the agreement yet. I think that was part of the negotiation, but we are looking at between 15 to 30% Kenyan.
The law provides 40.
That was the initial negotiation, and the negotiations have not been closed. So I'm sure
anyway, now
my colleagues will take over and move.
We'll ask whoever will be taking over.
Exactly.
Majority Leader?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker.
Remember, strictly one question each.
Honorable Speaker, CS nominee, EAC, the East African Trade Community, trade negotiations. Kenya is viewed as a very weak negotiator, especially for her local protection of her local industries and local farmers. And I would want to hear what you intend to do, should you be confirmed in this ministry, to be a good negotiator for Kenyan industries and more so farmers. Yesterday, the Honorable Mule here, or the day before, was speaking about tomato farmers, onion farmers, potato farmers, egg farmers, poultry keepers in the country not being able to sell their produce locally because of the proliferation of cheaper products coming from the East African community countries. And largely because of the East African Treaty, we cannot use tariff barriers, but the non-tariff barriers, which are supposed to be negotiated by the ministry, I'm told we've been very weak on that. What would you do to do that? And also on the policy of import substitution. We had very many good proposals, and I agree with the Deputy Speaker that you clearly failed in communication, because all the good things you've spoken about in your ministry of former Ministry of Mining, as you say, you engage with the Elgeyo Marakwet leadership. The Deputy Speaker was born there, but she represents the people of Singishu. Next door, she didn't know, because you engage with the local leadership. But that is an investment for Kenya, not for Elgeyo Marakwet County. And therefore, I want to put it to you, and you will tell us whether you actually did fail in communication. And if you failed in your previous ministry in communication, what would you say to convince Kenyans and us that you will not fail in communicating what you are doing for our country in the new ministry should you be approved? And I'm saying that, moving on to what I was speaking about, import substitution, our local manufacturing sector, because of a failure of communication in government, our local manufacturers had very good propositions or provisions in the finance bill that was lost, as we have been told, out of poor communication by government. We have now exposed our local manufacturers, whether they are manufacturers of diapers, sanitary towels, or those in the steel industry, to unfair competition from very cheap imports whose standards we can't even ascertain, since they come to the country done on standards from other countries, especially those from the far Asian countries. What will you do as a new minister to ensure that we at least save the good provisions that were there in the finance bill touching on local manufacturing industry, to protect our manufacturing industry now, as since the State Department for Industry will be under you, and some of those provisions sought to protect that State Department work in the manufacturing sector?
Nominee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I want to address the matters that have been raised by the Honorable Majority Leader, and thank you very much, Majority Leader. I think I will, first of all, I want to begin on where you stopped. On the issue of communication, I must say that we did all the best to communicate this through the media and through any other forms. However, going forward, it is a matter that we will be able to strengthen to ensure that there is communication. And communication here...
there is the mainstream media,
yes,
which we used to call mainstream media, which is the TV stations and the newspapers. But today, the alternative media, which is social media, is now the mainstream media.
Yes, exactly.
So you've got to change your thinking, who's alternative and who's the mainstream.
Yeah, that is one of the areas that we will, going forward, I think as government, we will be able to use those channels of communication to ensure that we get everybody on board. On the matter of local manufacturing and the industry in general, that Honourable Member alluded to the fact that there were good things in the finance bill, which were meant to revamp, some of the local manufacturers. One of the key areas that we will strengthen, or I will provide leadership in strengthening, is to make sure that we bring as many stakeholders as possible. For example, the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, KEPSA, the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and many other stakeholders, to make sure that as much as possible they participate. And also using some of the corporations and sagas in the ministry.
Chair, on a point of order, maybe the nominee did not get my question right, because those are the processes you are describing.
Yeah.
I was asking, should you get nominated?
Yes.
And you find, for instance, the provision to levy excise duty on sanitary pads that are fully finished products from, for instance, China, was in an endeavor to actualize the import substitution policy,
yeah,
to support local manufacturers. That particular provision was lost in the finance bill. Should you be approved, will you pursue, and maybe the nominee who was there before you actually did put it very well, that it is possible to break down the finance bill into various other laws. Should you then be approved, would you pursue actualizing the good provisions that sought to protect local industry? Because, as I said, they were lost because of the poor communication generally in government. So my direct question is, are you going to pursue the import substitution policy and protection of local industry, should you be approved, and bring legislative proposals to Parliament to actualize that which was lost?
Oh, yes.
Nominee.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. I think the answer is yes. Because, you see, if we had very good proposals that inspire the economy and they were lost, what I'm committing to this committee is that we will, and I will provide leadership in the ministry to pursue them. Because if we are to inspire the local manufacturing, then as government we need to have a deliberate policy to ensure that either we impose levies or we reduce levies to ensure that these manufacturing industries can survive. So the answer is yes. I will be providing leadership in pursuing these good things. But as we pursue these good things that were lost in the finance bill, Mr. Chairman, I also want to insist that we'll have a robust engagement with stakeholders who may not have seen this before, so that the decision that is finally made is made with all stakeholders in mind. So that is a commitment and a yes, and we will use all manner of communication to ensure that we are able to paint, the positive gains of these particular good things in the finance bill. So this is something we will pursue, Mr. Speaker. The second point about a weak negotiation for Kenya, I also want to commit that we will change the tables. It has come out not just in negotiating for farmers, but even in other forums, where we have a subcommittee of the East Africa community. Kenya has been making a huge contribution in terms of budgets, but in terms of benefits, you find that other countries are the ones benefiting. So this is an area I also want to commit that I will move in to ensure that we protect the national interest. And on this one, we make sure that we have parameters before negotiation, and we evaluate our negotiation so that we are able to benefit our people.
Thank you, Chairman, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have one question for the nominee, and it's in relation to the docket that is going now. Even though I come from an area where his previous docket was important to them. But now that we have been told to ask only one question, let me go to the future. The past, the one who's coming is what I will ask, whom I will ask. So, Mr. Nominee, let's go to manufacturing. And you know very well that manufacturing industry employs many people, contributes a lot to the economy of this country, and that's where economies that have developed emphasize their efforts on long time ago. So the manufacturing sector in Kenya now is facing significant challenges, Mr. Nominee, with many industries shutting down actually, production plants or downsizing operation. This is because the key issues they are raising is high taxation, increased cost of power, ease and cost of doing business, unhealthy competition from imported finished goods. And then neighboring countries are seemingly looking more attractive to them because of those issues. Some of those who have relocated business to these jurisdictions, if approved as a Minister for Trade and Industry, what are you going to do to reverse this sorry state of affairs, Mr. Nominee?
An additional question to that. It's almost a similar. As a Cabinet Secretary nominee for the Ministry of Trade and Investment, how do you plan to protect local industries and provide adequate financing for micro, small, and medium enterprise in the manufacturing sector, especially considering the significant decline of foreign direct investment as a share of GDP from 3.1% in 2011 to 0.3% in 2022?
Salim, let's take the next person. If you have no question, we pass.
I may not have a question, but I have something to say. Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Mvuria, many Kenyans think or say you are a desk minister. You only sit on your desk and run your ministry from your desk. Why am I? And one of the evidence they are giving is that where you are as Minister for Mining, many counties are mineral counties or mining counties. And for example, West Pokot County is seriously a mineral county. If you have somebody in West Pokot who is Mvuria, or is Honorable Mvuria, they will be thinking you are actually a governor of Kwale. Nobody will remember these 2 years that you have been a minister, Honorable Mvuria, in all honesty and truth. Nobody. So now you are going to a ministry which is also very important, which is industries. And all counties are going, the bottom up, they are going to be maybe industrial centers. Are you going to run your ministry from the desk where you are in minerals? Thank you, Speaker.
Short questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Quickly.
I want to confirm that I'm not a desk minister. I'm not a desk minister. I was in West Pokot because of the clinkerization program. the 45 billion. I was in Kithiori with Mheshimiwa here, confirmed. And many other places across the country, including Kadhonzweni in Makwiny, Mulukoba in Busia, and many others. So maybe I may not have come to your constituency. I was also in Kamket and Katikit, Kambia, Samakis, and I can give examples, you know, many of them, but I think we need to also acknowledge that our country is very big. And you cannot be there at the right time. Remember also, Mheshimiwa, this ministry was fairly new, and we had also to put structures in place before we go out there. But I have a lot of field information, which I can give you here to confirm that I was not desk, including visiting Ndarawe, the first minister of the Republic of Kenya, to visit Ndarawe looking for coltan in that area, and I was with the Member of Parliament. So I think we have quite a number of visits that we have done. But again, I want to say that we will visit Kenya. I will visit Kenya as much as possible. On the matter of protecting the local small and micro enterprises against the foreign investors who might have big capital. One of the things that I want to bring to Parliament, and we will work together, is that currently there's a lacuna in legislation to protect the local investors. And one of the critical things I want to commit we bring in this House is the Trade Development Bill and the trade development policy that is going now to provide a clear dichotomy about the foreign and the local investors. We put it in law. I know even previously there was a case of China Square which was handled, but I want to bring it to this House that we have a lacuna in law, and the first thing we will do together is to ensure that we review the trade development bill, we review the policy to ensure that we have inclusion of this kind of protection, so that we don't just do protection as a matter of impasse, but as a matter of policy and law. The other law that we will need to revise to ensure that we anchor our actions in law is also the Investment Act 2004. To ensure that it also recognizes that kind of arrangement where we protect our local manufacturing. The other question by Mheshimiwa Junet, it is true that we have a big challenge with manufacturing now. You know, we have a target to move it to 15% in 2027. And 20% in 2030. But if you look at the trends, there are quite a number of challenges that also challenge the manufacturing sector. And one of it is the cost of power, which Mheshimiwa has mentioned. And the cost of power is something that we can also do negotiation with our colleagues in the Ministry of Energy, so that we see the kind of tariffs that will be encouraging manufacturing, and the kind of tariffs that do not encourage, we review them, so that we provide an enabling environment for manufacturing. That also goes with also the taxation. But more importantly on manufacturing, manufacturing also required an enabling environment. And currently what is happening is that manufacturers would want a plug and play arrangement. They come to the country, there's a shorter process for licensing, you show them where to work, and they can work. Currently we have a big challenge with the issues of land. You find that many manufacturers would want, you know, big pieces of land. It is not there. However, because of the special economic zones and also the export processing zone, there is an opportunity there to ensure that we create an enabling environment for manufacturing in our country. And maybe these are some of the things we will discuss as we go along.
Speaker, maybe I could add one from Kenyan, who is asking about those special economic zones, CS, that nominee that you have mentioned. A number of these special economic zones now are being seen as havens for tax evasion. And a number of people who are in those special economic zones are importing products apparently for use in the SEZs, but they dump them in the domestic economy. What are you going to do to stem, the Kenyan is asking, what will you do to stem the abuse of the SEZs as tax evasion havens?
The action that I will take as the Minister for Trade is to ensure that all the manufacturers pay tax. So we'll use the institutions in the ministry to make sure that we enforce compliance. Because if they evade to pay tax, then it defeats the entire purpose of having them as a priority in the special economic zone. So we'll ensure that we use all the institutions available to make sure that they comply in paying tax in our country. Because we cannot give all the advantages and then they don't pay tax. That one is not going to be accepted.
Yes, Gikaria.
Thank you, Chairman. Maybe just to reiterate what the majority leader was talking about communication. I think it is important for the nominee to understand the importance of communication or passing the government information to the public. You know, I have been in a committee where we were oversighting the nominee, and it has always been an issue. But all that not without the question that I want to ask the nominee is on matters to do with substandard, counterfeit, contraband products that find their way in the market. And what happens, which is the worst part, is that hustlers, a local mwananchi who hustles, goes to the bank, gets a loan of around 100,000 to buy goods that he doesn't know whether they are counterfeit or contraband, and that is why the police land all the time, yet these things are supposed to be stopped at the point of entry. In your tenure in this ministry, what are you going to do to try and save these Kenyans the agony of losing all their businesses to the police? Just, in fact, that would have been stopped at the point of entry. So what policy measures are you going to put in place to protect these Kenyans by stopping these counterfeits at that entry point? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. Very quickly, I think it would be important if this committee finds you suitable to hold that position and you're passed or approved by the National Assembly, to have a candid conversation and a sit down with the manufacturers. Not just the normal conference, but have a conversation with them on what the issues are. Because we've left it to ourselves to decide it is the taxes, others think it is electricity, other things. Let us hear from them what their real issues are as you come up with the policies. Because if it's about taxes, others think that some manufacturers are favored. When we see exempts, we can almost tell which manufacturer is being favored. And so we want all manufacturers to feel that the country and you and the nation is actually serving them. But quickly to my question, direct question, what measures will you take to harness the entrepreneurial skills of our young people who have a strong focus on digital technology? We keep telling our graduates they are no longer, we don't have enough formal jobs, they should get into entrepreneurship, businesses, but what are we doing, or what will you do to see to it that we harness it and not just telling them there are no white-collar jobs?
Go to Mary.
Thank you. The nominee, I have just one short one.
Short questions.
Yes, short question. One.
To appease the previous one.
Yes. I want to confirm that even Tesos South Alupe area was visited, if not by you, by your counterpart in migration department. There was some mining activity. This relates to your former ministry. There was some mining activity right at the border, at Alupe area, at the neighboring countryside. Even the soil from the mining site has actually blocked the stream that is separating us and the neighboring country. The concerns of the community there are safety of the people. The houses are cracking, a lot of health issues, too much dust, and also fears regarding to the extent of the mining activity towards the Kenyan side. So my question is if you could give a comment to allay the fears of the community as to what has happened, whether they are safe, whether our minerals underground are safe. I think I leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the nominee, Honorable Mvuria. How are you going to, everybody is talking about industries and the big people. How are you going to talk about assisting the small person who is on the street in terms of regulations, in terms of markets for them, small places where they can do business, and regulations and licenses? Because you see, the licensing, I know it is in the county governments, but how are you going to look for them for the markets, export of produce, and the MTF, I think, third term, medium term, was done up to 2022. Are you looking at doing the medium term 4 while you are if you are chosen for this ministry?
Nominee, you can answer those from Gikarian, Isola, Mary, and Dawood. Short questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, Honorable Rahim. First of all, most of the trade issues around small and medium enterprises are devolved. And therefore, the action that I will do in the ministry is first of all to ensure that we develop a cordial relations with the county government. Right now, there are 37 county aggregation and industrial parks, and these are meant to provide an avenue for small level traders to have a place where they can aggregate, to have a place where they can have the first line of value addition. So this particular model that we are working with the county government is meant to inspire the local economy. So we will be able to work together to ensure that these KIPes then become practical, formidable places for value addition, for businesses, and to inspire private investment. And not just the KIPes, we also have a cluster, of aggregation centers that will also be very useful to aggregate their products and they can prepare for the market. What we will also do at the national level is to support the county governments with the quality checks. So we'll be utilizing our institutions of quality checks that will work with the county governments to make sure that if it is tomatoes that are being aggregated, then we look at the issue of quality. The other issue that Honorable Mary has raised about mining in Alupe, I want to confirm that we have mining activities in our neighboring countries in Uganda, mining of gold in that region. And the investor from across the border has been mining underground, entering into Kenya. And these are issues that we took up with our colleagues in Interior. And the Interior, and together with the Minister of Mining, closed the mine, and it is monitoring those activities. We also scaled up this as a border issue that is also going to attract discussions between Kenya and Uganda to ensure that we don't infringe each other's space. The other issue that Mheshimiwa Naisula has raised about harnessing digital technology, especially for young people. The plan is basically to do incubation and mentorship of ideas. So I intend to provide leadership for Kirdi to mentor and to do business incubation for young people. In addition to that, we'll be able to develop an industrialization fund, which is going to help young entrepreneurs to be able now to advance their business ideas. On the matter of counterfeit, first of all, I want to say that the area of counterfeit is an area that we will need to work together with Parliament to make sure that the counterfeit authority, has enough regulations, has enough legislation to deal with the counterfeit in our country. In addition to that, we will introduce a counterfeit integrated management system that is going to be introducing efficiency in identifying counterfeit and counterband goods. We'll also work with KEBS to ensure that they also participate in checking the quality of goods. However, most of these counterfeit goods come across the borders, so we'll work with our colleagues in security to ensure that we also create awareness and enforce compliance so that the borders are not used to bring counterfeit goods to our country. Thank you.
Yes, George, yes. Honorable George Murugano.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Nominee, I think you had started well in the Ministry of Mining. And I confirm because we went with you to Tharaka Nithi, and while there you mentioned Kitui and West Pokot and other counties. And you mentioned that investors are actually coming to invest in the mining sector in the country. I hope you've not lost the address book, because now it does appear that they may have to pass through you as they come to invest. And make it to EPZ. The EPZs are created purely to ensure that we exploit our local raw materials for purposes of export. But we are aware that the raw materials that are used in most of these EPZ industries are actually imported. They are brought into the country, they process them, and they then export. And we are told part of that is simple, the simple jeans worn by our youngsters in the country. Can you kindly confirm how you would work with, especially the Ministry of Agriculture, to ensure that those crops that are supposed to spur investment in the country, like cotton, sunflower, canola, and others, are revived, and we are able to start producing raw materials which would go into EPZ, as a result of which we would be able to export our own produce?
Owen?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to just ask one question. You know, when I joined university to do masters, there was this professor who must have been doing some work on AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunities Act. And he made me believe, every lecture he would just talk about AGOA. And he made me believe that this was a panacea to industrialization, to manufacturing, and to economic growth and the GDP of this country. If you look at the AGOA, the way it is established, it has actually, for a large extent, provided jobs for young people and all that. But this act is actually coming to an end in 2025. 2025, that's when AGOA expires. I have fear myself about it because I know the process and what AGOA is and the negotiations. How are you going to ensure that this AGOA treaty, especially for Kenya, is extended so that we can continue to benefit from it. And that the people who have invested heavily in manufacturing, in the industries that are supported by AGOA, do not lose their investments, and the young people do not lose their jobs, and the country does not lose on the revenue from AGOA. In short, what are your plans about AGOA, its expiration, and going forward? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Nominee Salim Mvuria. Historically, Kenya was a preferred destination for foreign direct investments. In fact, major multinationals are operating in Kenya and their distribution and manufacturing networks. But however, you have seen that they have left this country in droves as a result of punitive erratic tax regime. Sometimes it's cheaper to produce elsewhere and just send to Kenya and then distribute from here. Corruption by state officers, and this is in immigration, in customs, in standards, in physical planning, in environment, even sometimes at the county, like a case in point is a Tatu City in Kiambu. And then also the issue of poor infrastructure and energy and transport. What do you want to do so that you can return Kenya to its lost glory and have those multinationals come back, because then we'll be able to boost the issue of employment of our youth. And there's a question that had been sent to the committee, though it wasn't submitted, not in the form of an affidavit as required, but it was a question that I think you need to also answer, because an issue of integrity. These people are saying that there have been allegations, accusations, and criticism leveled against you on the matters of corruption with respect to misappropriation of county funds when you served as a governor. There is no details. They are just asking, what is your view on these allegations, and how will you build public trust and demonstrate that you are capable of dealing with stopping graft in that ministry? Thank you, Chairman.
Chair, can I give?
Yes, Mole.
Thank you, Chair. The nominee, Honorable Mvuria. As you are aware, that Kenya has invested a lot of funds and resources at Konza City for the last almost 10 years. And as a nominee for investment, trade, and industry, to help the government and the young generation to create jobs, what are your views? What is your vision for Konza City to be realized as quickly as possible to create the most needed jobs for the young generation in this country?
The short one, Salim, we can take Razo.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Because of time, I'll ask two questions. Honorable Mvuria, you were governor in Kwale, and then you were a cabinet secretary. For those of us in parliament, I think a lot of us, we feel that you governors who came to the central government still believe you are managers in counties as opposed to workers in the executive. Maybe I want you to really comment on that. My first question is on, because of time, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, proceed.
Okay. It is on the blue economy and mining. It is estimated that this is $1 billion industry, if properly looked at, or a lot of effort is put into it in mining, in the blue economy of fishing. But at the moment, we are only able to raise even less than 1% of the GDP. Is it that we are underinvesting particularly in that ministry, or we do not have the necessary human resource, or maybe because we don't know that that particular industry or resource exists, particularly in excavation of minerals, in the blue economy.
Those nominee.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
There are 5 questions. Murugara, Owen, Robert, Mole, and Raso.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I want to begin with the 2 questions that have been posed by Honorable Raso. It is true I served as governor for 10 years in Kwale County and transited to be CS. So I want to confirm that I don't think I'm in the county. I hold the national executive in high esteem, and I act within the mandate at the national level. So, and I want to speak also for some of my colleagues who have served together in cabinet.
Speak for yourself.
Because he said, you governors. You know, I want to confirm that that transition has happened, and it is now a national responsibility.
In any case, it was a comment. It was not a question.
Oh, I thought it was a
questions.
It was a question.
Yes.
The other thing about now the multi-billion sector in mining and blue economy, it is true it is a multi-billion sector. However, it is not a sector you go in and you get the multi-billion. You have to invest. And the first investment, for example, in mining is you have to invest in data. If you expect to reap revenues, then you need first of all to invest in data. And that is why it is critical to mention to this House that exploration going forward, government should invest a lot in exploration. So that when you now have discovered coltan, the government is the one saying we have coltan, it has this economic value. Then now you move to investment. But when you have minerals as part of occurrences, you cannot reap the billions. And I give you an example, Mheshimiwa. The little actions that we took in the ministry to just reform licensing and the basic data. Right now, the investments in mining this year will be 221 billion. The investments I mentioned earlier, there's one in Kajiado, clinkerization, 60 billion. So if you combine, you get 221. But it is a sector you have to invest first. Invest in licensing, invest in mapping, because you don't expect an investor to come and do prospecting. Then the government is the one reaping the billions. You need to put some money for that.
On a point of order, Speaker.
Secondly,
on a point of order, Speaker, just
yes.
on that point.
Yeah.
Because, Honorable Speaker, some of us have been here for some time, and I believe that's why probably Honorable Raso is asking that question, because data is available. CS. We spent not less than, if I remember, not less than 9 or 11 billion facilitating the National Intelligence Service to do a geophysical survey of all our mineral deposits. Are you then telling the country that this data is not available to the government or to the ministry? I know that was in the last regime, but government operates in perpetuity. And therefore, if that data, and we spend public resources on it, And I say that because I was the chairman of the Budget and Appropriations Committee when we allocated the first 5 billion shillings for that geophysical survey. That money was under the Ministry of Mining. It was moved to the National Intelligence Service with the justification or pretext that it was very sensitive data. Are you telling us now that that data that we were told was sensitive is not available at the ministry or with government? It disappeared with the other regime.
Okay.
And could that be the reason why there are people who settled on mineral deposits somewhere in, you know where?
I may not answer.
In Transmara.
I may not answer on the settlements, Mr. Speaker. I may not answer the settlements. But what I want to say is that that geo survey gave us what we call mineral occurrences, and there are 970 across the country. Mineral occurrences are indications. Like now, if you fly the plane in Tharaka, for example, they will show you, some basic information on iron ore, on lithium, and something like that. Once you do the occurrences, you need to come back and do a process we call ground truthing. Ground truthing now is the actual drilling of saying that in this area there are some minerals, coltan in Nachola, for example, in Samburu. Then ground truthing, you go back and now reconfirm. And now ascertain, is this of economic value or is something that is just for superficial? So that is the process that requires another investment. The good thing is that before I left, we have done 24 counties, and I think the technical team is reviewing data. So once you have that information, that is specific, you can now tell an investor, in Kenya, we have coltan in Darawe, in Alale, in West Pokot, of this value. Now that is the kind of information, Mheshimiwa, that we need to invest in. The second thing, the question also had blue economy. It is the same way with blue economy also. It is multi-billion, but it is not but multi-billion on arrival. It is multi-billion on your initial investment. For example, if you go to the Indian Ocean, there's a process that has to be done. You need to do stock taking, stock taking of the fish in the Indian Ocean, so that when you are negotiating also with investors, have an idea of what is there. The Indian Ocean and Lake Victoria are highly occupied also by settlements, especially Indian Ocean, you have beaches and whatever. You need also to do marine spatial plan so that you can identify areas where you can put small pots. You can identify areas where you can put different investments. That is an investment you need to put initially before you begin now to reap the multi-billion. But I want to confirm that as a country, we are now on the right trajectory. That will be achieved with time. Now I go to the other question. The other question by Mheshimiwa Mule about Konza Technopolis. This is really a gem for young people because this is a city which is going to host the digital ideas for our country. And in terms of management, the Minister of ICT is leading this special economic zone. Just like any other economic zones, the challenge is the infrastructure, the horizontal infrastructure. Already there has been discussion with the government of South Korea, and they have committed to help us in putting the infrastructure in Konza. So once the infrastructure is put in place, then we will have a good environment.
Point of order, Chair. Chair, so that I can help the CS nominee, already the horizontal infrastructure in Konza City is done. What is being required right now is to pull investors to come and put up the factories. And what I want to hear from you, what plan do you have and incentive government need to give so that you can pull the investors to Konza City to create the jobs. Kenya government has already invested, and we have visited Konza City not twice, not thrice. The horizontal investment is done. What you are speaking about, Korea government has already committed to put up the technical institution in the city. What are you going to do for the new investors?
Mule says Konza Technopolis falls under the ICT ministry. And the investment and all the plans is to make it Kenya's equivalent of the Silicon Valley. So it is not investments to manufacture clothes or shoes or those ordinary manufacturing and trade wares that will fall under him. That's what I understood him to say.
Chairman, what I'm looking forward for is the intertwining of the two ministries. We know very well, Konza City, the lead ministry is the ICT. But you are coming to a ministry whereby investment, trade, and industry will be under your purview, whereby government has already created the environment. And in your previous response, you say that the land and the infrastructure is required. Already there is already infrastructure done by Kenya government. It's you to intertwine with the industry, ICT ministry, to bring us the investors and to create the trade and the industries within the Konza City to create jobs.
The Speaker, I thought Konza City is a parastatal on its own, under the Ministry of ICT. Yeah. If I got it wrong, yes. I got it right.
It is.
Yeah. And parastatals are semi-autonomous things that...
That's what I try to tell the Honorable Mule, but he's asked the question. Let's see if Mvuria has the answer.
Mr. Speaker, I think there's no contradiction between me and the Honorable Member.
Yes.
When the Ministry of ICT is taking leadership,
yes,
we will work together to ensure that we support them and we create the necessary synergies within government to advertise Konza City, to provide support through Keninvest and other institutions in my ministry to ensure that then it becomes a viable project. So there's no contradiction. Okay. We will work together.
Okay. Have you answered all? Robert Mbuis?
I haven't gone. I'm now going to his question actually. So I started from the recent. Now I'm coming up until. I think Mheshimiwa Mbui had a number of issues. Some were comments, but I will try to speak to them. The allegations of misappropriation, Mr. Speaker, when I was governor, have not been brought to my attention. I have not heard from any government institution alleging misappropriation, whether it is EACC, whether it is DCI, whether it is Auditor General, whether the control of budget. I am not privy to any allegations on my integrity.
And he also said so that there was no evidence to that.
But it's good to put the record straight. Yes. Secondly, there were issues that Mheshimiwa raised about the foreign direct investments. And part of what we will be focusing on, the special economic zones, the EPZ, is basically to inspire the foreign direct investment. Right now, I think we have Naivasha, which there are quite a number of investors who have now reported. Electric vehicle manufacturers are now in Naivasha. We are also doing Busia. Busia is ongoing. So in a nutshell, what I will do, I will provide leadership to ensure this enabling environment that the government has earmarked to inspire investments, I will make sure that they come to fruition. Of course, there will be other issues that we will deal with together with Parliament, issues of taxation, issues of incentives for ease of doing business, including making sure that when investors report to Kenya, we have minimum restrictions. There are some investors, when they come here, we tell them they have to do some local registration or those kind of things. But that we will deal with you as Parliament to ensure that we together create an enabling environment for foreign direct investment. Mheshimiwa, when I hear you about the issue of AGOA, and you know, not just your lecturer, but many Kenyans, you know, are used to AGOA, which is coming to an end in 2025. And the discussion on AGOA is two-front. One is political, and another one is economic. Political in the sense that currently there are elections in US. And in between, the Congress might not sit to discuss AGOA. However, as government, we've already made our position known as Kenya position, that our wish is AGOA to continue. And that has been put emphatically.
Didn't the government sign a trade agreement with the US, or is not yet signed?
On AGOA?
No. Not on AGOA. AGOA is not just about Kenya, it's about Africa.
It's about Africa.
So you have to go cooperate with the rest of Africa.
Exactly. So I think the other issue, Mr. Chairman, that I wanted to bring on board is that we all know AGOA and the deadline. The government of Kenya, through the ministry, is also in discussion with the US government for the strategic investment partnership. That is ongoing, and part of what I will be taking over upon approval by this House is to ensure that, you know, we discuss graduating, you know, this STIP into a market access arrangement and a comprehensive free trade agreement. Those are some of the things that I want to commit that we will be putting on the table. Once we succeed to have it as a comprehensive free trade agreement and market access, then we will have had a good transition, you know, from AGOA to this new arrangement. But it's still on the table. There's a meeting next month on STIP, and I'm sure these are some of the ideas that we'll be leading as Kenya. The other question by Mheshimiwa George Murungaru, on, I think there are a number of issues that he mentioned, some comments. It is true we went together to Tharaka. We actually flew together to Kithiori. We saw the iron ore, and there are many things. I want to assure you, Mheshimiwa, there's an investor who is now coming into that area. That's part of the handing over I will do, but also because I'm in investment, we will work with my colleague because he's going to be putting up a value addition point in that area and immediately employ between 500 to 1,000 Kenyans in that area. So that's about the mining. The issue of raw materials, Mr. Speaker, I want to commit that we are working with our colleagues in agriculture. We will work with our colleagues in agriculture to revive the raw material crops that can support local manufacturing. And one of these is cotton. Already within the ministry there are projects, Ginary. The Ministry of Agriculture is already providing cotton seeds in parts of the country. Mapping has been done. Engagement with county governments has already been done. And I commit to continue this conversation so that we can have raw materials for our local industries, but also for the EPZ and for export. Part of these raw materials also means sunflower, because the importation of edible oil is taking a lot of our budget, and it is the desire that we inspire local manufacturing so that edible oil can be value added here in the country. And instead of importing, we can also export to other places in Africa. I hope.
Sharia, yes, you have done all of them. Sharia.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Mheshimiwa Mvuria, the Trade Ministry, in collaboration with county governments, has been and continues to implement the county aggregation and industrial parks. In your opinion, do you think there has been enough publicity and stakeholder engagements? And what strategies or approaches will you adopt to forestall these projects turning into white elephants? Thank you.
Thank you, Mishi.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, before I ask my one question, I just want to put a rider on what our nominee has just said, and because it affects my constituency, and this is about the special economic zone, you need to know that there is what we call Dongokundu Special Economic Zone, which is situated in Likoni constituency, where I represent. And I just wanted our nominee just to give some clarity on how many foreign investors so far have expressed their interest vis-a-vis the local investors. And if it is true that local investors have been denied to be given land for investment, I just want him to answer this so that he gives clarity to Kenyans. And my question, Honorable Chairman, it is on the...
That a rider or a...
That is a rider because there's already talked about special economic zone, Chairman. But he didn't mention about Dongokundu special economic zone. That is why I had put that rider. Honorable Chairman, my question, it is on the Kenya Kwanza manifesto, which was talking about establishment of leather industry clusters, which was to be in Athi River, Narok, Isiolo, and Wajir. I just want to ask our nominee, what specific strategies are you going to employ to ensure that Kenya Kwanza government will realize this agenda? And on the same breath, what policy intervention are you going to employ to help reverse the current unfortunate trend of closure of industries? And also coming up with new industries like coconut, cashew nut, and Bixa, which is grown in where you come, Kwale County. I thank you, Honorable Chairman.
Mukami. Honorable Mukami.
Honorable Speaker, my question is considering the legal challenges to the Finance Act 2023 and the significant role of small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, in Kenya economy, what steps will you take to ensure that new tax regulations are fair and supportive of SME growth, while also addressing the broader goals of economic stability and trade enhancement? Thank you.
Caleb.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Our nominee, you must have looked at the developmental states and how their path to development was based on, especially the ones that took the route of trade surplus, that is the advantage of the exports over the imports. Some they call it mercantilism, where you put more rules and the standards to make sure that the exports surpasses the imports to develop your nation. It has proven in many, especially the South Asian countries of Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan. This one requires a regime, a set of rules and principles to guide it. The general agreements on tariffs and trade is one of the regimes. Of course, it has transformed now to the World Trade Organizations to encompass the service industries and the intellectual properties. But where does it put the Kenya, the global south? Do we find it fair? Do we are we guided by fair regimes at the World Trade Organizations that enable us to have this mercantilism advantage to us, the trade surplus, as a factor of development? You, as a new coming minister, if you are approved, which regimes and how will you maneuver through these international organizations that are always unfair to the global south? But and the last week I had to raise as a point of order, but I knew I'm going to speak. The question of Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah was very pertinent, Mr. Speaker, because I'm also aware a lot of money has been put to survey by the NIS. But most importantly, Speaker, is that most of the nominees we vet here, they have a lot of promise on what they are going to do. Once they get to the office, they say there's no money for implementation. But we need them to tell us, is there even a paper you wrote requesting for funding that if this one is provided for, then this one will be actioned upon?
Nominee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker and members. I want to begin from Mheshimiwa Caleb. I think I want to be very clear on the issue of mapping of minerals. As I said earlier, this process was done. You know, the resources that were allocated for that activity, it was okay, it was done. Identified 970 mineral occurrences. Then the process of ground truthing began also with the budget that we had. And now 24 counties have been concluded and it will continue. I want to be understood that on matters mining and all other areas that have been put before, these are areas that you need to do initial investment before you reap the benefits. I think that is the...
I've said that 3 times.
I have said it 3 times, but now Mheshimiwa brought it back. That's why I'm saying it again.
May allow me to save time.
So it is not an issue of...
The question was just clear. If there is any evidence of you requesting maybe the Treasury that if we have this funding towards this project, then we're able to discover our minerals. Just that.
Mr. Speaker, I didn't complain. I was giving you the concept of investing and reaping. However, all that I committed in the first vetting, I was able to do. So on that one, I can pen off on that one. The other issue about World Trade Organization and engagement with Kenya government. The World Trade Organization, in my understanding, is an organization which gives broad policy framework for countries. However, when now you want to do specifics, you do negotiations specific to the area that you would like to have advantage. And therefore, I want to confirm that upon approved by this House, I will engage World Trade Organizations at the global framework level and also provide leadership on now specific negotiations. For example, if you are doing negotiations with a certain region, then that is a specific discussion. However, the general framework has to be within the World Trade Organization framework. So the World Trade Organization may not necessarily be a hindrance, but when it comes now to the specific discussions, that is where negotiators and governments have to be very careful to ensure that their national interest is upheld. And on the matters of tariffs and many others, I want to give an example. You know, last year, just one statement imposing levy on clinker has been able to bring a lot of investments in clinkerization in our country. So the tariffs are being employed by government selectively and deliberately to address a particular policy implication. And I'm sure these matters of tariffs and taxes, the ministry will not just conclude. The House of Parliament will be very critical in having discussions on the kind of levies and tariffs that will apply for certain agreements, for certain products, and for certain negotiations. So I think I want to commit, Mr. Speaker, that the ministry, upon approval, will not make these decisions in isolation. We have National Treasury, we have the National Assembly, and the matters of tariffs will be for all of us. The other question that Mheshimiwa Shurie had asked, whether the kipes will be white elephants. I want to confirm to you, Mheshimiwa, and this House, and Mr. Speaker, that the kipes will not be white elephants, because if you look at all the counties, they are addressing a particular value chain. And that value chain is so dear to those counties that we cannot afford to drop the ball. So I will use all my skills to ensure that we properly engage. I will use my skills to ensure that we get the right business model strategically to ensure that the kipes do not become white elephants. The other question by Mheshimiwa Mishi on Dongo Kundu. And I want to say that I have not skipped Dongo Kundu, Mheshimiwa. It's a very, very important project for Kenya. And it covers Kwale County and Mombasa County. The current situation with Dongo Kundu is that we are now moving on with the implementation of infrastructure. JICA has come in to support the government of Kenya. And also KPA is providing leadership in this project. We have 1,648 project affected persons who will be compensated. There's 384 acres of land in this area. They will be resettled and properly compensated before the project begins. Currently, there are 72 investors who have expressed interest. Unfortunately, I have not been able to dichotomize whether local or foreign. But I'm sure going forward, we will have a chance to classify them, and then we will see who is foreign, who is local. But the commitment I want to say, Mr. Speaker, is that we will ensure that there is fairness in the allocation of land in Dongo Kundu. On matters leather, it is a very critical value chain in the Kenya Kwanza plan. It is also a critical value chain in MTP4, because Kenya has abundance of leather, and we actually have a target to, get income from leather to the tune of 120 billion every year. What is happening, Mr. Speaker, is that right now we will be working on the value chains, and upon approval, there's already Kenani in Athi River, which has been identified, as part of the leather industry that is going to host the value chain there. And therefore, we are on schedule. We know there's Isiolo and many other counties that will participate, and we will work, I will provide leadership to ensure that we work with everybody and all counties involved to revive the leather industry in our country. That also goes for other value chains. I think Mheshimiwa also raised the issues of cashew nuts. And already with Kirdi, we will provide leadership with Kirdi. There's an open area in Malindi, which is earmarked for cashew nut value addition. So we'll be working with government agencies and also the private sector to ensure that we get value addition investments in these crops. And part of what we're already doing is that on coconut we have an investor, Kentest, where they are also doing value addition for the products within coconut. So this is a trajectory that I commit to continue to ensure that we capture all the value chains that are going to be useful to the economy of our country. Mheshimiwa Mukami, on the issues of finance bill, I think both the 2023 and the 2024, it's not all lost. There are good things there, and I commit to keep the good things, to engage widely, to ensure that those that will be supporting the micro and small enterprises are also brought forward to support Kenyans.
Nominee, a few questions sent in by members of the public. As one, he must be probably from your county. Wish you Allah's blessing. What will you do if approved to invest in digital technology, especially in agribusiness? Another one, why is titanium shutting doors under your watch, with the locals losing jobs? You have taken away mining of titanium from Australians and handed to Americans. Why?
Chairman, can I add one?
Let me finish, then you add.
Okay.
Another one, what specific trade and investment policy proposals would you suggest to create jobs and unlock new economic opportunities for ordinary Kenyans, particularly the youth? Kenya has, the next one, Kenya has a vibrant startup ecosystem, but many young entrepreneurs face challenges in accessing funding and support. How will you foster a more supportive environment for startups? And what measures will you introduce to attract investment in tech and innovation? Next, with the rising cost of living, affordability is a major concern for many households. What measures would you recommend to reduce the prices of essential goods and services? And how will you make it easier for local businesses to provide affordable products to the public? The next, small businesses are the backbone of our economy, yet they often struggle with challenges like access to finance and markets. What specific strategies would you propose to support small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, and make it easier for them to thrive? The next, with the rapid growth of the digital economy, many Kenyans are looking for ways to leverage technology for businesses and personal growth. What proposals would you recommend to support digital entrepreneurs and ensure that all Kenyans have access to the benefits of e-commerce and digital trade? The last is, Kenyans are proud of locally made products and want to see more made in Kenya goods in the market. What initiatives will you pursue to support local manufacturing and encourage the production of high quality Kenyan products? Those are some of the questions from wananchi who are watching these proceedings that I have sent us to ask you.
Honorable Speaker, can I ask mine?
Yes, yours or Kenyans?
Kenyan.
Yes.
We wanted to train on beans, githeri, dengu, lentils, and bazi. But from the letter, it says it will cost us 120,000 for every product. That is killed. That means per product, per formulation. How are we going to afford that? And yet, we are urging our young Kenyans to start small businesses. Thank you.
Razo.
Thank you, Speaker. What emerging markets hold the greatest potential for Kenyan exports? and what support is available to help businesses penetrate these markets?
Mr. Speaker, one more.
Yes, Caleb.
How will the nominee for trade ensure there is balance between the government's appetite for tax and the enable environment for investors in the country? This is because reduced taxes is one way of enhancing an enabling environment for trade and wooing investors, ensure predictable tax regime.
Okay, go ahead, Salim. Those are Kenyans who are watching you perform here, sending in their questions. Some of them you have been touching on them along the way, but you can answer those that are fresh.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank all the Kenyans who are actively watching this vetting, and also for their questions that they have raised to ensure that they get responses. The first issue of digital technology. Digital technology, there's a commitment to have a Konza Technopolis, to provide that opportunity on technology, and I'm sure young people will be beneficiaries of this. What I want to commit to this Kenyan who has asked this question is that I'll be part of this program to ensure that young people benefit from this program. The second issue about titanium and closing. I want to make it very clear to all Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, that the closure of base titanium has no relationship with me, the ministry, or the government. The closure of base titanium is related to the depletion of resources. Last year in October 2023, they wrote a letter.
Financial resources or mineral resources?
Mineral resources. Last year in October, they wrote a letter to the ministry indicating that they have now exhausted the mine, the titanium that they have been mining in the area that they were given a license. The same base titanium has applied for other areas in the country. They have applied in Lamu. They have applied in Tana River. They have applied in a very small area of Kwale County. And those applications have been gazetted and they are under consideration. I'm sure my colleague will be taking over the decisions of those applications. I also want to make it clear, Mr. Speaker, that as government, we didn't have any role in the shareholding by Americans or Australians. Base Titanium is a private company, and therefore when people buy shares, it is not that I'm the one who has given it to Americans. So I want it to be very clear. But I also want to say that we have a post-mining land use committee, which I did institute, and it is going to discuss with the stakeholders on how the post-mining land is going to be used. And I want to urge this Kenyan who has asked this question to also participate actively in this forum so that they can decide on the post-mining land use. The other question related to issues of trade. As I said earlier, we will work with the Parliament to ensure that we review the trade policy and trade law so that it can be more inclusive to support local investments and have a framework that can also support funding. The issue of support ecosystems, as I said earlier, Mr. Speaker, already we will be working under KIRDI to provide mentorship and business incubation. I will also provide leadership to set up the industrialization fund so that those business incubators can benefit from this program. Yes, the cost of living and issues of prices. I think this may not fall squarely on me as the CS when I'm approved by this team here. but it is also
Not
relating
when,
to many other.
Not when, but if.
If approved by this team, Mr. Speaker, the issue of prices and the cost of living, it touches, many aspects of government, and therefore, as multi-agency, we will be working closely to ensure that this is done. However,
there's a point of order from Junaid.
However, yes.
Okay, carry on.
However, there are also some aspects that we can handle as investment, trade, and industry, especially on working with the Ministry of Agriculture, for example, to ensure that we inspire and encourage, production. And when the production is enough and it has surpassed, like now, what we have, then I will provide leadership to ensure that we have a warehousing receipting system, that takes the surplus to the warehouse, and that then we can use it to bring down prices at some point in the year. So we'll be working to make sure that we have that warehouse receipting system to aggregate surplus produce and to make sure that farmers and other business people in that are not captive of cartels. The other issue about SMEs and access to finance and markets, part of the reform that I will propose upon approval is a situation where the big manufacturers work with the small, medium enterprises. We have a situation where manufacturers are the ones transporting their last mile product. We want to bring regulation, we want to bring a policy and a law that allows the small, medium enterprises to be subcontracted, to be able to deliver to the last mile. This is part of the reform that I will be proposing upon approval. Again, on matters of e-commerce, now that we are focusing more on technology, the ministry will also be working on making sure that we strengthen our presence through e-commerce. People can make the advertisements, they can have systems to pay, and all this. So we'll be working with stakeholders and parliament to ensure that this comes to fruition. The issue of local products in the local market, I think I also agree that as Kenyans, we are very proud when we buy Kenya and build Kenya. So in this front, I'll be activating the Ken Invest and the Kenya branding agency to ensure that we promote the local products. Most of our products are not properly advertised. And part of the reform is to ensure that Ken Invest and the Kenya Export Promotion and Branding Agency come to this field so that we can have a lot of advertisement of our local products and of course work on other issues of quality, look at our quality laws, whether they are sufficient, and propose amendments where need be. The other question by Mheshimiwa Mukami, which is very specific, it has a very specific cost. Mr. Speaker, I would wish that I give commitment to work with the Mheshimiwa and many others to look at this issue of training at 120,000 per value chain. I'm sure many small business people will not afford this. And this is a commitment that we'll be discussing on how this can be reviewed and how we can strategically position Kirdi to support more Kenyans in the value chains that are being suggested. Mheshimiwa Raso talked about how Kenya is positioning herself on emerging markets. Mr. Chairman, we already have efforts that I wish to continue upon approval by this House. One is that we already have the APA, the Economic Partnership Agreement, with the European Union, which is giving us an opportunity as Kenya to consider a new export market. However, Mheshimiwa Speaker, this APA or the Economic Partnership Agreement, many investors locally and even producers may not be aware of some of the advantages and opportunities that exist. I want to undertake to ensure that we do a robust dissemination so that people can understand what
is duty-free, quota-free, right?
Yes, but you know, there are products that have been mentioned there. Like when I read it last, immediately after signing, I realized that there were a lot of things to do with fisheries. So we took it upon the ministry to engage the EU on how we can have specific actions and specific implementation framework on matters related to fisheries and blue economy. And that discussion has gone on. There are many others, you know, that affect different ministries, different agencies, and these are 900-page document, Mr. Speaker, so it requires dissemination positively, especially for those that...
You will be the focal point if approved.
I've already committed to do that.
It will be your duty then to tease out everything and disseminate to action areas.
Exactly, I've already committed that, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Secondly, Kenya is also opening new fronts, especially now. I know we have COMESA, we also have SADC, and we have the East Africa Community. East Africa Community is giving us a new market of around 300 million. But that combined, we are also will also provide leadership in the tripartite free trade agreement discussion so that we can open a new market of 600 million people in North Africa, East Africa, and South Africa. That will also become an advantage. But I think as Africa, we can open more the 1.2 billion population through the AFCFTA, the Africa Free Continental Trade Area, that is going to be useful to open emerging markets. So I think what I want to confirm, Mr. Speaker, is that I'm cognizant that there are new markets, and I'm also committed to continue the conversation to make sure that Kenya takes advantage of these markets for our products, but also for movement of goods and people.
Thank you.
The last question from Mheshimiwa Caleb was basically asking me how we will be able to balance between appetite for taxation and incentives for production and investment. And I think that is the dichotomy that we will all be working on to ensure that we don't overtax, we don't introduce levies that Kenyans will not be able to pay, but also give incentives that will inspire investment. I want to give an undertaking, Mr. Speaker, that I will be committing to ensure that when we are doing this discussion, of course, it does not just rest with my ministry, but even other ministries, we will be alive to the fact that we cannot overtax Kenyans. And we will continue that trajectory in a manner that we have fair, but also inspiration in our investments. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Mvuria, I will be requesting at the end of my explanation that you give us an undertaking that you will do certain things. You have said something very profound. You have said that you got money for geophysical survey, but did not get the corresponding fund for truth, what do you call it? Ground truthing. Yeah. So it beats logic to get one and not get the other. So the challenge here, when I've heard you speak, is that we have a problem with sequencing government projects and programs. For example, Rivertex in Eldoret, investment was put into it, state-of-the-art factory. But unfortunately, you did not promote local growing of cotton first. Therefore, they are importing cotton, so it's not benefiting the locals. On edible oil, there's been a lot of talk about we don't want importation of edible oil. But by now, we should have marshaled all our farmers to grow sunflower, canola, coconut, so that by the time you're bringing the industry to come and make edible oil here in Kenya, we have the raw material. When it comes to rice, again, we want to stop importation of rice, but there is no corresponding program to promote maximizing the growing of rice. So even if we say we are going to be milling our rice in big numbers so as not to import, we haven't done the first things first. Sequencing is a clear problem. On the issue of clinker, we have put levy on clinker, but we did not ensure that we have sufficient clinker deposits in the country and that are already being mined, so that as we put the levy, we ensure that we have enough deposits in the country. That is why the price of cement has hardly changed. So can you confirm that when you become the minister, if we confirm you, of investments, trade and industry, you will ensure that you have a Gantt chart at your desk, a dashboard where you can actually make sure the sequencing is correct for it to make economic logic? Because that seems to be the only problem. Do we have your confirmation, sir?
Speaker, on the same, during the finance bill on the sanitary towels, it's the same thing. The raw materials are expensive for the manufacturers, local manufacturers, and that is why during the amendments, Honorable Leah now brought amendments to exempt the raw materials. So there has to be a sequence, not just putting taxes on the on the imports, and we're not dealing on the raw materials.
He hasn't given assurance.
He will give when he starts answering.
Mr. Speaker, there is one issue I wanted to bring in conclusion to the attention of the nominee. Mr. Speaker, in the ministry is going to, in the 2 years that have passed, or 1.5 years, there was a program that was done in that ministry of importing edible oil of billions of shillings through KNTC. And that edible oil ended up staying in the stores of KNTC close to a year, I think, until it's expired, or it is still there, or it was sold. I can't ascertain. And recently, the managing director of KNTC was taken to court, I think last week or the other week. And the government looks like the government lost colossal amount of money, billions of shillings. And that program was meant to lower the cost of living. At that time, the cost of edible oil was very high, so it was thought that if it is imported, it can reduce. But it ended up coming here more expensive than the locally manufactured one. So how do that ghost is waiting for you in that ministry if you are approved by this committee? Are you willing to go into that ministry with that kind of ghost, or what do you think? I'm sure you have done your survey, or how will you handle that matter? Because it's going to wait for you there.
And maybe as a supplementary to that one, a quick one, do we still need KNTC as a trader of commodities in the current world free market?
Nominee, can you start with the undertaking, then cascade down?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. You see the question that Honorable Gladys raised is not a yes and no. I have to say something to affirm. Of course, I will be affirming.
We are running out of time, so be very...
Yeah, but this is pertinent, Mr. Speaker. If I don't get it right here, I'll be misquoted.
Okay.
First thing is that the geo-survey and the ground truthing were funded. Geo-survey, then we realized we needed ground truthing. We requested for, not simultaneous, separately. When I went in, I then made the proposal to do ground truthing. It was funded. Some money was removed during supplementary, but as I said earlier, some work has gone on in 24 counties. Secondly, on the issue of river tax and all these others, I want to give an undertaking. Using my project management skills, the sequence will change. I know the sequence also involves other government agencies. My undertaking is that I will provide leadership to ensure that if it is funding, if it is decisions, we do on all steps so that we don't end up where we have ended. I know, right?
Thank you. Then now, I now have an audio-visual evidence of
exactly, exactly. And I want to, we will be playing it, Mr. Speaker, at some point to see how things are moving. And I know there is an issue with edible oil about the imposition of levy for crude palm oil. It is the current matter for discussion. And as you rightly put it, Madam Mheshimiwa, the levy was not in bad faith. However, it is the sequencing, because the levy was meant to promote the local manufacturers to, at this time, to have worked with farmers, the sunflower farmers and other farmers, to have edible oil value added here in the country. So sequencing again has brought a challenge. On that particular matter, I'll be working with the National Treasury, the manufacturers, so that we can see an amicable resolution to that matter, which is very live in public. I'm sure Mheshimiwa Naisula was adding the sequence issue, so I really don't need to respond to. Mr. Speaker, I want to assure this House, even though there are challenges that have happened with the KNTC, upon approval, I will report to the ministry. I have no fears, Mheshimiwa Junet. I will go to the ministry. I'm aware that there are legal proceedings going on with the issues that have been raised. We will allow the legal process to continue. But the action for me upon approval is to now rethink KNTC and see how we can do basic reforms to make it more effective or make other decisions. So, Mheshimiwa Ichung'wah, that is something that I'm also thinking about, seeing the kind of reforms. It is not responding to whether we need it, but when we do an analysis and the reforms, then we will come up with a good decision.
Is it under among the 47 that you passed in cabinet to get rid of?
I'm not, I haven't looked at the list, Mr. Speaker, but what I'm saying is whichever way we look at basic reforms to make it more efficient.
But my question was CS, because we are here to ascertain your capacity and ability to take over that ministry. In your opinion, under the current liberalized market, KNTC is the old thinking where you needed government to trade in commodities to regulate pricing. Do we honestly need KNTC, in your own opinion?
In my own opinion, Mr. Speaker, we don't need the KNTC in its current fashion. And that is why I talked about reforms.
And you must have the courage to do those things to save public money. Now, before I come to mundane questions,
Speaker,
we must come to an end. We must come to an end.
Okay.
Yes, there is only one question that has been sent asking you, nominee, that there's a command called Kenatco, which is still in GOK books as a parastatal 100% owned by ICDC. It has been under stage managed receivership for over 27 years. What measures will you put in place to simply wind it up or privatize it?
Mr. Speaker,
you know Kenatco?
Yes.
Yes.
The measures upon approval, my first assignment will be to understand it, because I think the Kenyan has put some basic information, but there will be more that we will need to find out, and then appropriate action is taken. So I will take it up, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that we get to the bottom of the matter and then we make the necessary decision.
Okay, yes, Russell?
I think unlike KNTC, with Uber, Kenyatta should go. Do we need it really?
Yes, yes, it does. Yes, Salim, and I think we'll direct the Committee on Trade to follow up in case you are approved to account for the 27 years of receivership of this company. 27 years under receivership. That is unacceptable. It is not your fault.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
In case we approve you. Yes. Now, Salim, we'll ask you a few mundane questions. Have you been adversely mentioned in any integrity-related report or investigations?
No.
Apart from the no evidence statement by Robert?
No.
No. Do you hold any position in any political party?
No.
What is your net worth?
158 million.
158
million.
Million.
Yeah.
Made up.
I've given a breakdown.
Yes. Which page? Your assistant is just laughing there. He should be helping us to identify the page because you should have carried documents. Is that your assistant? Yes.
I can't see because you know now I'm facing you, Mr. Speaker.
There's a gentleman who walked in with you. I believe he's your assistant. He's sitting there looking very happy. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, it's page 6.
The assistant is fired. The MPs have found the page.
Yes, MPs have found the page and have done the work of your assistant. Yes, we see what you have. When we last vetted you, what were you worth?
120.
120.
Yeah.
So you have had a growth of 38 million.
Yes.
How did it come up?
The value of the property, some property were completed, and yeah.
Okay. Good.
Mr. Speaker, point of order.
Yes.
In his CV,
yes,
he says he went KCPE in 1779.
Those are typos.
He's not from the ancient land.
That's the more reason why you should fire your
assistant.
Your assistant.
Mr. Speaker,
yes.
Just, Waziri, from your declaration of wealth, have you benefited from the mortgage scheme as a cabinet secretary?
Recently, but it is not concluded yet.
Not concluded yet,
yeah.
So it's not part of this?
Yeah.
Okay, nominee, we are coming to an end. Make sure you take your documents with you. We have checked with what we have and we have found them correct. We have also found the issues that were sent through memoranda against or for you, 21 of them, you satisfactorily responded. So unless you are lawfully held, you are discharged to go to your other duties.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity and members of this committee. This discussion has been very good. It's a good opportunity to engage. And my final appeal is that this committee finds me suitable to serve in the Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Good afternoon.
This has been perfect on time.
Sergeant, you may escort the nominee. Members, you have 5 minutes. The mic. For the record, your name is John Bandi Ngongo.
Yes.
Ngongo or Ngongo?
It's Ngongo.
Ngongo.
Yeah.
Correct.
Thank you.
And we all know you. You're still part of us. And until further notice. You are welcome to this committee. Committee on confirmation hearings or vetting. I'm the Speaker of the National Assembly. For the record, on my right is the Deputy Speaker, Gladys Boss. My left is the Clerk, Samuel Njoroge. I'll invite members to introduce themselves for the record.
Naisula Lesuda, MP Samburu West.
Kimani Shongwa.
Junaid Mohammed.
Koech Nelson.
Kosing David.
Gikaria David.
Abdul Rahim Dawood.
George Gitonga Murugara.
Owen Bayer.
Robert Mbui.
Stephen Mule.
Dino Raso.
Abdi Shurie, Balambala.
Mishimboko Likoni.
Dihab Mukami.
Caleb Sabuti.
Now, Honorable Mbadi, welcome to this committee.
Thank you, Mr.
We know you are a serving member of Parliament and you have been in Parliament with all of us. I was with you in the
10th Parliament.
10th Parliament, and you have been with all your colleagues here through the parliaments. Nonetheless, they will be asking you questions, difficult ones, easy ones. Your being a colleague will not prejudice their ability to assess your suitability to hold public office to which you have been nominated. And we'll start by asking you to take an oath. You may opt to use the Bible or the Quran, depending on your faith.
I'll use the Bible.
The Bible.
Yeah.
Be upstanding, take the Bible in your right hand and recite the oath.
I, John Badi Ngongo, do swear that the evidence I shall give before this committee on the matter and its consideration shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
You may sign the oath. Thereafter, you may hand over your documents to the sergeant to pass to the clerk, so that as we go on, he'll be verifying with what we have on you. Honorable John Bandi, we know you have been with us, and you've been nominated by His Excellency the President to occupy the high office of CS Treasury of the Republic of Kenya at a time when exceptional skills are required to help navigate the country through some difficult moments in our history. We want you to introduce yourself for the record. Give us a little preview on your educational background, your work experience, and why you feel suitable to hold the office to which you have been nominated. No more than 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and honorable members of the Appointments Committee of the National Assembly. And Mr. Speaker, as you rightly put it from the beginning, I know this committee has a constitutional mandate and responsibility to vet appointments or nominations by the President. And so, being colleagues notwithstanding, However, I just want to mention very quickly, Mr. Speaker, that I'm John Buddy, as I've mentioned before, and as you rightly mentioned. I was born 53 years ago in a small village called Seka in Gwasi, Suba South constituency of Homa Bay County. I went to school, first Seka Primary School, 3 years. That's class 1 to 3, class 4 to 8, in another school called Legongo Primary School. I'll not go into the details because we don't have time to talk about my childhood history. I then proceeded to Kokoro High School. Kokoro Boys is in Awendo constituency, modern day Awendo constituency, where I did my KCSE, and then later proceeded to the University of Nairobi School of Business Studies, that is a Faculty of Commerce. I'm a graduate of accounting, and I'm also certified public accountant. Actually, I'm a member of the Institute of Certified Public Accountants. I am member number 6101, and I'm in good standing, Mr. Speaker, as can be attested to by the file that I've just passed across. Then I must then move straight, Mr. Speaker, to my work experience, which spans over 28 years now. After graduating from the University of Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, I was employed to work with the same university in the finance department. Started off at the very basic level, entry point for a graduate, which is assistant accountant, where I was basically doing the routine accounting duties. But later I rose very quickly to become an accountant, finally to senior accountant 2, and then finally to senior accountant 1. In which time now I was involved in more advanced accounting work. I actually was responsible for preparation of the final accounts for the university. I was in a team that was doing that and preparing for final audit. I was also involved largely in cash flow management for the university. I then later left the university to work for an international organization called Media East Africa. It's a humanitarian organization with headquarters in Switzerland. I was the regional finance director responsible for supervising the finance departments of the region, that is Uganda office, South Sudan office, Somali office, and the Kenya office. The budget for that organization, or the regional budget, which I was responsible for, was $8 million US, which in the current foreign exchange rates could be about 1 billion plus. And my duty in that organization, Mr. Speaker, was basically to do fundraising, do the budget, preparation of budget and fundraising, ensuring proper utilization and efficiency in financial management in the entire region. So I served there for 3.5 years. Then I became a member of parliament, having won my seat for the first time in the elections which were conducted on 29th of December 2007. I won Gwasi parliamentary seat, a seat I won again subsequently 3 times. Actually, I have the record of the only person who has ever been elected in that constituency more than once. But having said that, Mr. Speaker, when I joined this parliament, I have done this now takes me even to the relevance of my nomination or the docket to which I'm nominated. Since I came to parliament for 15 years, from 2008-15 January to 2022, say for a few months, like about 7-8 months when I served in the cabinet as assistant minister in the office of the president, I have always been a member of the Budget and Appropriations Committee. This committee is the one that actually has the constitutional responsibility and mandate to prepare the budgets of this country. Actually, the budgets that come from the National Treasury are estimates. The budget is a preserve and function of the National Assembly of the Republic of Kenya. So during which time, when I was a member of the Budget and Appropriation Committee, I interacted a lot with the Kenyan budget and the macroeconomic policies. I can attest that have interacted with the budget review outlook paper, which is always prepared every year, I am very comfortable with how to generate budget policy statements, budget estimates, finance bills, division of revenue bills, county allocation of revenue bill, generally budget process, and the debt management strategy paper. So, Mr. Speaker, I don't want to go into much details, but let me just mention for relevance that as Assistant Minister in the Office of the President, I was also involved in helping the Prime Minister, in the Office of the Prime Minister, sorry. I was Assistant Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, and in that office, the responsibility of that office was basically to supervise and coordinate government functions in all ministries, departments, and state agencies, which is very much in line with what my role at the Treasury if this committee proposes my approval to the National Assembly and finally approved and appointed. In that office, Mr. Speaker, you will recall that there was no minister. And you will also recall that at the time I was appointed, Mr. Speaker and honorable members, there was not even a deputy prime minister. Because remember, the former president, who was a deputy prime minister, had stepped aside because of the cases that he had at the ICC. And the current prime cabinet secretary, who was another deputy prime minister, had already, because of political differences, practically left office. So I was basically deputy or assistant prime minister during that period that I was there. And so I, by default, and I helped the prime.
Yes. Members, take your seats.
Mukami, take your seat. Gikalia, take your seat.
Honorable members, take your seats. Sergeant, you may bring in the nominee. The accused. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Take your seat. For the record, you are called Rebecca Miano, AGH. Use the mic.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
My name is Rebecca Miano, EGH.
Good. Welcome to this Committee of the National Assembly, Committee on Appointments, to vet you or have approval hearings to assess your suitability to recommend to His Excellency the President to appoint you to the position of Minister, Cabinet Secretary for the Tourism and Wildlife Ministry. This committee is a committee of the National Assembly, and I'm the chairman. On my right is the Deputy Speaker, Gladys Boss. My left is the Clerk of the National Assembly, Samuel Njoroge. I'll invite members to quickly introduce themselves.
Naisula Lesuda, MP Samburu West.
Kemani Shongo.
Nelson Koech.
David Kosing.
Gikaria David Nakruist.
Masemeri.
Abdul Rahim Daud.
George Gitonga Murugara.
Owen Bayer.
Stephen Mule.
Didoraso.
Mishimboko.
Rehab Mukami.
Caleb Amisi Saboti.
Rebecca Miano, you are one of the few with the luck to be vetted twice. We did vet you just about 2 years ago, and here you are again. We'll start in earnest by inviting you to take an oath. And the oath is on the holy books, either the Quran, the Bible, or the Hindu holy book, whichever is your faith. Which one?
I will take the Holy Bible.
The Holy Bible. So be upstanding and take the Bible in your right hand and recite the oath.
I, Rebecca Miano, do swear that the evidence I shall give before this committee on the matter under its consideration shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Thank you. You may sit and sign to the oath. If you have your documents, as you should, you will give them to the sergeant to pass them on to the clerk to cross-check with what we have in our possession. And when we are done with you, you leave with your original documents. In just under 5 minutes, Rebecca, for purposes of these proceedings, members will be referring to you, including myself, as nominee. So nominee, tell the committee your name, your educational background, your work experience, and your key competences that make you suitable for being recommended to take up the appointment for which you have been proposed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and honorable members. My name is Rebecca Miano, the nominee for the docket of tourism and